All the contact information is on that website.
It is, but you can also email us at Why did we have to change the email address? Clearly.
Welcome to AT Banter, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything regarding the world of assistive technology. With our hosts, Steve Barkley, Rob Minot, and Ryan Fleury. Now, let's banter.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of AT Banter.
Which episode is this, Rob?
Yeah, I knew I shouldn't have said anything. Well, we're going to call this episode 21.
But if you've been keeping track.
But I'm sure who's going to keep track, really? I mean, yeah, I know. There's a level of irony that on an episode that I complained about math, that I managed to get the episode number wrong. But we're just going to call this episode 21. There's a loss. Just for those who are keeping track, for those who are super fans, they would really track something like this.
There will be a lost episode.
There's a lost episode. Episode 19 is a lost episode. So we kind of jumped from 18 to 20. And I'm going to say it's because there's a lost episode and not because I can't count. But anyways, I am Rob Minot, and I am joined by Ryan Fleury today.
I am Ryan Fleury. And
we have an empty chair.
We do.
Steve Barkley is not with us this week. He is out in the wild. That's right. He has gone hunting on a little bit of a hunting vacation for the week.
For food.
For food. Yeah, I should say that. He's not a trophy hunter. He's strictly food.
Yummy.
He lives several blocks away from a Safeway, so he doesn't have easy access to meat. So he needs to go hunting, folks.
400 kilometers away.
That's right. It all makes sense in hunters' minds,
That's
people.
Right. Hopefully he's wearing his orange vest.
Yes, that's right. And what are we talking about today?
Today we have the president and CEO of Descriptive Video Works, Diane Johnson, joining us.
Yes. So looking forward to that.
Should be very interesting, very informative, just kind of how the process all works and how it all comes together in the end.
Yeah, I'm pretty curious about just how long of a process it is and how it all works. And then, how do they decide what gets described and what doesn't?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Anything interesting happen in the news?
I'm just got onto Twitter this morning, like in the last half hour or so. Nothing I've seen so far.
I didn't see much either. Everybody's sleeping over Thanksgiving.
Probably.
Except Donald Trump. He managed to stir it up. But without Steve here, it's no fun talking about Donald Trump, so I'm sure that he would have nothing but great things to say about Gate.
He's been saying some things on Twitter.
Has he?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go, everybody. Check out Steve's Twitter feed for an up-to-date assessment of the Donald Trump scandals.
Yep.
And clown sightings.
Yes, that was on the news on the weekend, talking about the clown sightings.
Did really?
Mm-hmm.
Have there been more?
Well, I think it was CTV we were watching. They were just saying it seems to be, a thing now here locally. People are just, doing the dress up as clown things and scare people, right?
Well, it's Halloween. What do you expect?
Well,
it's fine.
It is. Until somebody loses an eye.
Well, yeah. But if it's a clown, it's okay. Because they deserve it.
And some people like being scared.
It's true. All right.
No, Rob's got a hairball today.
I know. Well, I'm still getting over this cold.
Oh, yeah.
It's the cough and the is always the last thing to go.
I tell you, as soon as you feel a cold coming on, start the cold effects regime.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Works for me every time.
Does it?
Yep.
Well, how early do you have to take it?
As soon as my eyes start getting itchy, I start taking it.
Well, see, I don't even think I'm sick by then. Like I don't. My first, seriously, the only thing that I clue in on that I'm getting sick is if I start to get a scratchy throat.
Yeah, then start taking it.
So that's not too late.
It might be, but it'll probably still shorten the length of time because it's popping up your immune system. I think it is. People may think it's just all a farce, but it works for me.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Ryan Fleury, sponsor of
Cold FX.
All right, well, we're very happy to have with us in studio today Diane Johnson, who is the president and CEO of Descriptive VideoWorks.
Thank you very much for having me in studio.
Thanks for coming out all the way into the wilds of Burnaby to come sit with us.
That's right. It's hard
great to be here. Yeah.
All right, well, maybe what we should start with is just for people who might be listening who aren't in the blind community, just give us a quick definition of what descriptive video is.
Sure. Descriptive video is basically painting pictures for people that are blind or vision impaired of what's going on in television and movies, in commercials now. I started the company 14 years ago when a lot of people didn't know what descriptive video was. And now, thank goodness, a lot more people know. It's something that, we think that there's about 25 million people that are blind and vision impaired in North America. And it's something that is really important that they be included in everything that everyone else can be, whether it be television shows, whether it be Netflix, movies, whatever.
So, and you mentioned, so it's been around for 14 years?
It's been around longer than that, but in Canada it was mandated by the CRTC that we had to have television programming that was done for the blind and vision impaired. So in 2003, the CRTC mandated it. In the States, it was mandated in 2012. So. Yeah.
Now, is that only like a certain number of hours have to be described?
Yes.
Or will we get to the point where like it's closed captioning, where everything's closed captioned?
Well, I have all my fingers crossed here and toes and everything else saying that it should be, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, we've come a long way in Canada in the next year and a half. It's mandated that all prime time programming, which is between 7 and 11, has to be described.
Okay.
And as we know, a lot of kids' programs are being described as well. So I think in Canada, we're doing a fairly good job. The broadcasters are doing a good job of making sure that there's a fair bit of programming. But I agree completely with you, Ryan. Like closed captioning is 100% and has been for many years. Yeah. Why on earth would it be any different for descriptive video? That just seems, and that was one of the reasons I got into the business. I just thought this is absolutely not right.
Right.
It would be like a restaurant, a long time ago when we had to put ramps going into restaurants for wheelchairs. It would be like a restaurant saying, oh, I'm not going to do that because I don't care if people in wheelchairs come into my restaurant.
Right.
And, really everybody should have access to all the same things.
Absolutely.
So what's your background?
Broadcasting. So I was in radio for 9 years. I was in television for 5 years. I was marketing director for Disney for 5 years. Wow. And then knew that I wanted to do something in broadcasting that made a difference and, remain in broadcasting. And a friend from Global Television phoned me one day and she said, you should look into descriptive video. And I, as many people, said, I've never heard of this. What is this? And, she said, well, it's like closed captioning is for the deaf, but it's for the blind. And so because I'd been in broadcasting for such a long time, I knew a lot of the people in the business. So I thought, well, there's two things that are going to be important if I'm going to start a company to do this. One of them is that broadcasters are actually going to want somebody to do it, or are they going to do it in-house? And oftentimes with things like that, they'll decide to do it in-house. So got together with the vice president of operations at CTV in Toronto. And I just said to him, you've heard about descriptive video, that we have to do it. What do you think? We had a great discussion. He just pointed his finger at me and he says, Diane, if you start this company, we're going to be your first client. And I went, okay, CTV is our first client. And then the other thing is I thought, I'm not going to do it if people that are blind and vision impaired say, you know what, we really don't care. We've gone this long without it. It doesn't matter to us. And it was the absolute complete opposite. And that was when I really got passionate about it. And the more I researched it, I thought, this is ridiculous. Like, how have we gone this long with people saying, oh, closed captioning, yes, everything has to be done, and not descriptive video. And that was when I just thought, okay, we're doing this. And that's...
One of the more recent examples I have is the movie The Martian. Very, very silent movie. You know, as a blind person watching that, I had no clue as to what was going on. So I went back and read the book, and then I watched the description version. And if the description is well done, it really brings the movie to life. I had no idea what was going on in that movie until I had the descriptive version.
Yeah, and that's a perfect way to say it, because that's our job. And if we can make it come to life so that you're not missing anything, then we're doing a good job. And that was the other thing that was really important to me, is that the work that we do isn't doing it just to fill the mandate. It's doing a good job. And I'm really proud to say that we've done like 18,000 shows now, and they'd all better be a good job, you know. So
how many different, I guess, actors or describers would you have working for Descriptive Video Works?
We have about a dozen writers. Wow. And we have probably about the same narrators, because there's so many different genres. And the writing part of it, to me, is the most challenging, because you've got only a certain period of time to put in what is the most important. So you have to determine what's the most important thing to say, how you can say it in the most concise way, and then also making sure that you're keeping into account the music. You know, you think about a horror film, you know, and the music is telling the story. Well, if you've got a narrator that is voicing over the music, then you've also missed some of the message that's trying to come through the music. You know, and the other thing that we find is really important is not stepping on dialogue. You know, also, sometimes when I listen to shows that other companies have done, you find that the levels are really bad, so you can't hear the description.
Well, I think that there's really no... Well, there are standards when it comes to setting levels, but every mixer or sound engineer kind of does their own thing, right? So as long as it's within a certain parameter, they can get away with that. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we did a couple of years ago is we put together a described video committee, and we call it the Best Practices Committee. And the reason that we did that is because we'd watched what had happened with closed captioning, and there was all these ma and pa shops kind of opening up in people's basements, everybody going, hey, there's money in this, anybody can do it. And it was done so poorly. And I've noticed that with descriptive video, that there have been companies that are doing a very poor job of it. And to me, it was really important, because you look at someone that's blind or vision impaired, they're all excited going like, oh, wow, we've got this. And then they watch the show and they go, well, I couldn't figure out what was going on, or the voice was annoying, or whatever. So you really need to be respectful of that throughout the entire process.
And what would that process be? How does it begin?
Well, here's how it begins. We get the show from the broadcaster or from the producer, and it's file-based now. When I started the company 14 years ago, we were sending tapes back and forth across the country. And so now everything's file-based, which is great. So we can be getting shows from anywhere in the world. So we download the show, we give it to our writer. The writer writes it, and they all have different ways of, some of them watch the whole show first, some of them watch segments of it. It just really depends on their own style. And so they write it, and that usually for a 1 hour show would take about a day to write it. And again, depending on how complicated it is, how detailed, you know, sometimes if you get a documentary and it's a lot of talking heads, it's not as much description. So they write it, they send it back to our studio, they send the script back to the studio. Then we have somebody that, you know, QCs it, just takes a look at the script. And then our narrator comes in and they voice it. and they voice it in our studio. And that's another QC or quality control aspect of it, where as they are voicing it, the narrator has the show up on the screen, and she or he may look at it and go, hey, that's not right. Let's rewind that. Let's go back. And it may just be something that the writer forgot, or she maybe did a typo where she said he instead of she. So we have all of that. And then our final quality control aspect is when they mix it. And so our mixer is looking just to see, what kinds of things, might have been missed or something like that. And then it goes back to the broadcaster and it's ready to air. And for television, people access it through second auditory program on their TV. They just go into the menu and...
don't get me started on that.
I know. As I said that, I thought, I just opened up a can of worms.
Hey, the cable box guides aren't accessible.
I know.
They don't talk. I don't know which is the SAP button on my remote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some remotes don't have it.
Yeah, it's... that is one of the challenges, that's for sure. Yeah. But,
So when you sit down to do a show, then, like you were saying, where the narration and the descriptions fall within the space of the show is very important. Is that something that the writers work on, or is it something that the voiceover artists work on, or is it something that's done in the mix?
It's done. The writer works on that,
Okay.
so they know how long they have to say something, and it makes it a lot easier. We have a system. Other companies do it different ways. We have what I believe is a really good system to make it accurate, so they know if they've got 10 words in there and they can really only fit in 8 words, it's their job to do that. Having said that, we have different ways that we would tell a narrator that they may have to speak quicker. So sometimes you may hear them speaking quicker, and normally we don't like to do that, but we also know if there's some really important information that has to get in there, that's really the only way to do that.
So when it gets to the voiceover artist, then they know, say, that they have to say this sentence within this space of time for, say, an audio cue, for, say, some gunshots or something.
Yeah.
So they're aware of that when they're recording?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm really proud of all the people that work with us. We have a fabulous team that really loves what they're doing. So they make sure when they're doing it that it's not just a job like, let's go in and voice this thing. They're really conscious of it. And we get together a lot with people that are in our focus groups that are blind and vision impaired to make sure we're doing a good job, because we're sighted. Like, how dare we think that we're doing a good job unless we're going to the intended audience and saying to them, are we doing okay here? Can we improve? How can we improve?
Well, and you don't want to describe her talking in a monotone voice and just getting very flat. That doesn't bring anything to the movie or to the TV show.
Yeah.
As a blind person, I want to still stay involved.
Yeah.
And that's very important.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's another good follow-up question, too. So when the writers are approaching some sort of material, the actual writing, do they work to match, say, the tone of the scene? For example, if they're describing, say, a haunted house or a room in a haunted house, is there a focus on, say, the language that they use?
Absolutely. We did 400 SpongeBob SquarePants shows. So that will tell you right there. So one of the things that we did is we actually had a team of writers working on it, because I wanted them all to be working with the same tone. And different things like, SpongeBob reclines in the chair. He would never talk like that. He sits back, whereas if you were doing a documentary, you would say someone is reclining in the chair. So just watching your language to meet the genre of the show is really, really important.
And your audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of moving parts to it. It's not, when I think when people think of, descriptive video, I think there can be the inclination to just be like, well, it's easy, but it's actually very hard. It's hard to set a scene and to be able to describe it in words to somebody. We saw this when we were talking to Stephanie from Vocali. There can be a real challenge to it, because you don't want to take the viewer out of the show through something that you're describing. You sort of want to pull them into the show as opposed to saying something that's going to pull them out. So it's hard to do.
Yeah, it is. And there's a fine line between too much description and too little description. And that was one of the things when we have a really extensive training program for writers, and they can't write on their own until they've been writing for 3 months. Because there's so many things that have to be determined so that you're painting a picture, but you're not going overboard and you're not overwriting. Because you think about it, the listener, the viewer, doesn't want you to tell them everything. They want to leave some of it to their own discretion, but they also need to know certain things. And that's where the challenge, I think, really comes in. And that's where a really good writer makes a big, big difference. Yeah.
Well, even like I started watching Luke Cage on Netflix, and I couldn't get my audio description working on my Apple TV. So I got into the first episode, and I didn't know what was going on because I'm so used to having it say, Netflix appears in white block letters on your screen, and Luke walks into a restaurant and tells me what's going on. Without that, I had no clue where I was at in the show. I didn't know what was going on. And it has to be, like you say, it's timed. It has to be well spoken. The words have to be carefully chosen, and it makes all the difference.
I was very pleased. About 3 years ago, Netflix got a hold of us, and we had a number of discussions with them about getting audio description on Netflix, and it was one of the happiest days when they finally said yes. We've done House of Cards for them. We do Narcos. We do Narcos in Spanish and in English. And one of the things that I think it's really taken it to the level that it should be is Netflix.
House of Cards was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. That's one of the shows that, when we started working with Netflix, that they have really high standards, and we knew that it had to be done well. So just as an example, because there's so many different areas that could look the same, we did a lot of studying around sort of Camp David, what that looks like, what the boardrooms look like, so that we were describing them well enough and we weren't giving the wrong place, because again, that would set a whole different image in the eye of someone that's watching that can't see what's happening.
Right.
So, yeah, and also the voicing there was very important too, as it is with everything, but this was a more serious type of show, so you had to keep, not the whole thing isn't serious, but some of the aspects are.
Yeah, no, it was very good.
Now, and so do they have, obviously I guess they would have say, but do they generally have input, say, in choices like, say, well, we'd like a male narrator as opposed to a female, or do they just pretty much give that to your discretion?
Usually it's given to our discretion. I'm talking about all of our clients, not just Netflix in particular. Most of the time, I'd say you'll get one or two clients. We're starting to do a lot of corporate work now because a lot of people's websites, things that they have online have to be described. Right. And so if you're dealing with an ad agency, they're used to choosing the talent. Okay. And so we tell them that they can. So we'll give them samples of different talent. After we've worked with them once or twice, they always say, you know what, you guys know what you're doing, you just decide. Right. And we do. Like I say, my background is broadcasting, so the voice, to me, it's very important what type of a voice we are using. Again, going back to SpongeBob SquarePants, the guy that voiced it, I worked with in radio 25 years ago. Oh, right. And you had to have a young sounding kind of upbeat, different type of voice. And his was perfect for it. And the same thing when we did Downton Abbey. You had to have a certain British accent. And these were all things we determined. The client didn't determine them. Right. But that's our job. It's not just to say, okay, who have we got on the roster that can come in? It's got to be based on the type of show.
So it can be a bit of a long process, not necessarily just from the moment you get the file and you start working on, say, an hour-long show, but there's a real process behind it when a client first comes on board, because you have to do that. You have to look at the show. You have to decide who you're going to use as your
as your voice talent, who you're going to use as a writer. I mean,
Absolutely, yeah.
So it could take, when a new client comes on board, there's a real process behind that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things that we do, most of our writers have been with us for 9 or 10 years, so we've got a really good stable of writers. And what we do is we ask them. We know what their interests are. Like there's, some of them love design, some of them love sports, some of them love mystery, sci-fi. And so what we try to do is give them the shows that they're really interested in. Like if you gave somebody a sports show and they know nothing about sports, they are going to look into it to find out, but why not give it to somebody that knows about sports,
Yeah.
And they love doing it that way too, because you think about if you've got a topic you're interested in, you go, oh, wow. Like right now they fight over The Bachelorette. Who's going to be doing that one? So
That's still not going to make me watch it.
So it was fun, something like Netflix, for example, like they release, entire seasons at a time. So do they come to you before release and have all that in place, or do they generally will say release House of Cards and then they'll come to you and say, okay, can you do season 1?
it depends which show it is, whether it's an original or if it's one of the shows that they have, that was a television show to start with. So they determine that.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the other interesting aspects too, and I don't know, Ryan, if you've watched any of the Olympics or the Paralympics at all.
Didn't catch any of the Paralympics.
Yeah, but, we do a lot of live work now, and about 6 years ago, the live work started. And we'd always, when I started the company, I remember meeting at the Banff Television Festival with the CRTC and some of the broadcasters. And we all said, oh, you'd never be able to do live. And we're like, how could you ever do live? That'd be crazy. And so about 6 years ago, CTV came to me and they said, what do you think about doing some live? And I was like, well, you know what? We've worked for you now for a number of years, and you're not going to fire us if we do a bad job. And if you want to try, let's try it. And so I said to him, what do you want to start with? And he said, well, we've got the Juno Awards coming up. And I said, great, when's that? And he says, 2 weeks. I was like, oh, okay. So we did some really intense, extensive training with our writers then. And we also knew that for live, there was a lot of different skills that they needed to have. And you have to be really okay under pressure. Mm-hmm. You have to really be able to, speak on your feet, so to speak. You've got to be with it and change things up, be flexible. It's a whole different thing. So we did the Junos. Now we've done, the Paralympics, the Olympics, the some of the government, like the Liberal campaign, their electoral. I can't remember what it was called, but anyway, their conference. We've done a lot of the awards ceremonies and things like that. And we've got a really awesome team. And just for the first time ever, which you think about how ironic this is, but in the States, they had never described the Olympics or the Paralympics. Mm. And I asked them, 3 years ago, NBC, because I said, we're doing it in Canada. Why aren't you doing it in the States? Mm-hmm. And this year they agreed to. And so it was the first time ever in the U.S. that the Olympics have been described. Wow. So we did the opening ceremony, the closing ceremonies, and every day, 4 or 5 hours of highlights. And we got some really good feedback. And I was really pleased because, again, they're live and they really have to do their research,
right.
And NBC was fabulous to work with as well.
Did you guys do the 2010 Paralympic opening ceremonies here?
Yes.
Okay, because I did get a receiver for that, and my wife and I went and I listened, and that was really good. It was well done, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's got to open up a whole other bag of challenges when you're doing a live event. So is it the writers that are performing, or are they working with the voiceover, or is it a whole little team that...
It's a different team. We have what we call our live team, and they all are writers, but you have to have different skills. So you think about it, you could have a really good writer, and they had all the other skills, but they had a voice that was really annoying, and that was something that was really good. It also needed to be somebody that's used to being on stage where they've done improv or something where you can quickly change things around if you need to.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a different, they still need to be really good writers, but they also have to have additional skills.
Like the play-by-play commentator.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so are there more and more live events? Like, are they becoming a lot more popular these days?
Yeah, they are. Because some of the shows also, like we do a show for CTV called Daily Planet. We do that every day. And CTV, it's a real priority to them, so they wanted to make sure it was described. But a lot of times they're not finished their production or any of their work until an hour or so before it airs. So we have, they set up a booth for us right there.
Wow.
And they're really committed, which I really give them a lot of credit for. So our live describer goes in there every day and describes Daily Planet.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So you guys do like CTV, Global, Sydney?
We're not doing Global.
Okay.
We do CTV and we do CBC.
Okay. Is anybody doing Global?
Yeah, somebody else is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so there are other companies that are doing what you're doing?
Yeah. There's a couple of other companies that are doing that. So
did they start up around the same time?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
We're the leader in descriptive video. We've been doing it for the longest. And I'm pretty sure we've done the most shows. So it's, and it goes up and down. I remember when I first started the company and I was the Vancouver Sun did an article on us, and it was a fabulous article. And I had all these people phoning me, and I was thinking, this will be really good for publicity. We'll get some work in the door. And no, we got a lot of people applying to voice and to write and everything. So, we started out with one show. And, and that was like one show a month, so to speak. And now oftentimes we'll do 100 shows in a month. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's really grown. Thank goodness.
So what types of, I got a couple questions for you. So, you work with CTV. Mm-hmm. What other type of broadcasters do you work with? Like Nickelodeon, Much Music, MTV, any of that? Who? We
do some work with Super Channel. Okay. We do A&E. Out of the States, we work with Viacom out of the States. In Canada, CBC is very committed also to doing audio description. We're doing a number of shows with them. Like you look at a show like Dragon's Den. I don't know, Ryan, if you watch that, but that's a great show to describe. You've got it's one of their highest rated shows. Mm-hmm. And as a person that's blind, you wouldn't be able to get what was going on. There's no description of sort of what the things are that are being promoted. Mm-hmm. And, Rick Mercer,
right.
A number of different shows like that. And then you go to The Bachelorette or,
no.
So all very diverse, that's for sure. Yeah.
So you've also got multiple offices. I think I saw Vancouver, LA, was another New York or something? There's a third one? We
do all of our recording out of Vancouver.
Okay.
When I opened up in the States about 4 years ago, we have an office there, but it's just an office, really. We don't do a lot of work out of there at all.
Okay.
I thought we needed to have a presence there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that the presence was international, like our company's international. It doesn't matter where you're doing the studio work.
Right.
And I did think about, opening a studio in LA. And I thought I want it to be right here where I'm close enough to it if something goes wrong.
Right.
Not that I'm the technical person at all, because I'm not.
Yeah.
But at least I can get things going. And as we all know, with everything being file-based now, it doesn't matter where your studio or your business is located.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you had an office in LA, if the stuff being shot in the US would go to that office, the stuff in Canada would come to here.
Because we're an international company. So, and this year for the first time we did, out of Montreal, we did the Paralympics.
Right.
And I was really pleased to be able to do that. That was, through CBC and AMI. So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this might be more of a question for, say, the channels, but I'll ask you because you might have some insight. How do they go about choosing a show that they decide that they want descriptive video?
Usually, it would, if it's one of their higher rated shows, that would be one that they would decide. Like W5. We've been doing W5 for CTV for, I think, 12 years. And W5 is a show that is very highly rated for CTV. And that was a show that oftentimes the producer isn't finished the production until 4:00 on a Friday, and we get that show, and sometimes we write it overnight and voice it early in the morning because it airs in the other coast
Right.
The next day.
Wow.
So that was a challenge. CTV came to us and said, look, this is a high priority for us, but they're not finished production. Are you able to do it? And I talked to our people, and a lot of our writers are screenwriters. They don't work 9 to 5. Who works 9 to 5 now anyway? Nobody I know. So they were fine with that.
Wow. You'd have to be flexible in that business.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you really do.
Especially the live stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And you also have to know sometimes that you're really pushed, there's a real ebb and flow to it, when there's not a lot of work coming in. Of course, that's when I panic. I go like, oh, we've got all these great writers. I want to keep them busy. And then there'll be times where there's so much work. You're saying to them, for this next while, can you work 7 days a week? And they're more than happy to do it because they also know there may be a lull again. It's not the kind of thing that on Monday morning, you go in and you go, okay, this is exactly what we're going to have this week, Yeah,
well, absolutely. I mean, especially when you're working on a production schedule, you're working with shows that are being produced on a specific production schedule. It can be really challenging, I'm sure, to work with them on that because, like, I remember there was a great documentary on, I think it was on Netflix a while back, about South Park and just what their process was like. And it was really surprising because they literally, Monday morning, they start work on a blank slate. They have no idea. And through 7 days, they produce a 30-minute episode. And they're literally finished, like you said, like an hour, 2 hours before airtime. Yeah. And that's an incredible, it can be a really incredibly tight production schedule for these shows. Yeah. And to have to factor in descriptive video, I can see how that could really...
Well, sometimes what will happen with a producer is they still don't know that they have to include audio description or descriptive video in their in the show that they're sending back to the broadcaster. And at the last minute, they'll go through their contract and they'll go, okay, well, we've done closed captioning. We've what's this thing, descriptive video we have to include? They'll come to us in a panic and say, we've got to deliver to the broadcaster in a week from now, and we've realized that we've got to have descriptive video. Can you turn it around? And we do. And we don't charge, I don't believe in charging rush charges for that. Right. I think it would be very money grabbing of me to say, well, too bad you didn't figure it out. I'm going to charge you double. Yeah. It's just not right because that show should be described, and they just didn't know it because it wasn't part of the process before.
Now, you were saying earlier when we started that it was mandated. Does everything have to be described now?
What has to be done is prime time.
Right.
As of, I think it's about a year from now. Most of the broadcasters are going over the amount that has to be described. And does everything have to be described? No, but a lot of times now, and I can't say for sure, but I would say the majority of shows that a broadcaster has bought, say, from a producer, like say they've said, okay, we're going to get, a series from you, 13 shows, they will probably put in the contract for the producer that does have to be described. Okay. And it makes sense to do that. I mean, they're saying to them, you have to do closed captioning, which has always been in the contract. And so now they include it. So, people say to me, well, who actually pays for the shows to be done? Sometimes it's the broadcaster because they've delegated funds to go towards accessibility. Right. And sometimes it's the producer that's going to pay for it. I think it's smart for producers to do that because, they're all crossing their fingers that Netflix might pick up their show. Well, Netflix is going to ask for it as well.
Yeah, and the thing I keep waiting for is somebody to come out with a guide that tells you what shows are described, because that still doesn't exist. Yeah. Whereas with closed captioning, it's just a given.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and those are the things that seem to be taking longer than they should. AMI, Accessible Media Inc., we partner with them. We don't consider them a competitor. And they do have a guide on
Right.
AMI.
Yeah.
But of course, it doesn't include shows that you want to watch on
CTV
yeah,
or-
you know,
yeah.
it doesn't include Netflix. Say.
Right.
You know, like if you could just go and you know how you have the search thing and
Right.
just put in, okay, give me the entire list. And you know, I think, and I do think that will come.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to take people that are blind or that are families of people that are blind getting a lot more vocal
Yeah.
about what they want. And that's how the whole Netflix thing came up
Right.
as well.
With Daredevil. Yeah. It's
yeah.
like, what do you mean this isn't described?
Yeah.
And there's a huge outcry.
Yeah. And yet they had been talking to us about audio description prior to that.
Is that right?
Yeah. And, you know, I think when you look at how far they've come, I'm really pleased to see that. They didn't
Absolutely.
just say, okay, well, you know what, we're just going to do a few shows so we look like a good guy. They do a really good job.
Yeah.
You know, and now that we're doing Spanish as well, you know, you look at, Ryan, have you watched Narcos?
Yep. I watched the first season.
Yeah. That's a tough show to describe. You know, you've got a different language, you've got subtitles, you've got, you know,
Yeah.
and we did focus groups on that. And one of the things, if you've only watched season 1, you'd notice a difference in season 2 because
Okay.
our focus group said to us, you're doing subtitles, but you're having a male voice do the subtitle for a female. And we kind of went, oh yeah, because we wondered for the first season if we should do it like that.
Right.
And we realized that we needed to change that. And that, again, to me, is one of the best things about focus groups. Like they tell us, they help us.
Yep.
And I love getting feedback. You know, I'm going to ask you after the podcast for any feedback that you have, the places we can improve.
None right
Because
now,
we're
but-
all looking to, you know, we're always looking to
Right.
improve what we're doing.
More and more content now is also being, you know, distributed through Amazon and YouTube and different online channels. Are you guys involved in doing description for those avenues as well?
I would love to be. So if you can get me to the right person, do you know how hard it is? Yeah, I mean, we should be because I know that we do an outstanding job of the work we do. It's not just a bragging thing, it's pride that we can't send anything out the door that is less than 100% because somebody like you would say, well, that was I'm not watching this show, and you turn it off because it was confusing or it wasn't the right information or the levels were wrong or whatever.
Right.
And our job is to make sure that you go, wow, that was great. I wouldn't have got that if it wasn't described so well. So yes, to answer your question about Amazon and Hulu and everything, that's one of my things that I'm trying hard to get there with. And I look at, with NBC, I'd asked them for a while to do live, and this year we did it. So I know that, I have the vision. It'll happen.
So when you guys are approached by somebody to do the description, is it like an exclusive contract where you get the whole like first season, second season, third season, or can they shop that around?
They can shop it around, but they don't usually. I've never heard of them shopping it around.
Why would you bother, right?
Because if it's done, if we've done it to high standards, and the other thing is you're watching season 1 and then season 2 comes on with a different voice and a different style of writing, there's not the continuity to it. And we always try to, if we can, have that continuity, especially with the voice.
Right.
If we have somebody's on holidays and we have to get a show out, we try to match the voice as closely as we can. And some of our voices are quite similar, and they all have a pretty good range. So, that's something that's very important.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, even you listen to an audiobook and the voice, the narrator
Makes all the world.
Well,
Yeah.
it becomes a character as well
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
And I could see it being, something similar with descriptive video.
Yeah.
Have you thought about making descriptive audio tracks available only? So instead of buying a Blu-ray and again not being able to navigate the menu on the Blu-ray to turn on the descriptive video track.
I think that would be a great idea, but I also recognize that I don't own what we did.
Right.
So as soon as CTV, Netflix, whoever it happens to be, pays me, that's theirs. So I don't have the right to do anything
I
like
see.
that. I think it's a really good idea.
Right.
And what I'm hearing now is a lot of sighted people when they're driving, will have their phone on Netflix audio description, and so they've got their own talking book, basically.
Right.
Which, like, I really think that descriptive video is for everybody.
Sure.
I have a lot of people that say to me, you know, I turn the descriptive video on because I'm looking after the kids, or I'm in the kitchen cooking,
Yep.
and I'm still getting the description,
Right.
so I don't have to be right in front of the set.
I guess it's like listening to books from Audible, right? You're in your car, you're jogging, whatever, you know,
Yeah.
you got your book being read to you.
That's
Yeah.
brilliant, actually. I should do that because I run into that problem all the time when I'm
There you
cooking
go.
and I want to have something on.
Yeah.
I totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
You changed my
See,
life.
we just changed your life here. Day after Thanksgiving, your life has changed.
All right.
Excellent.
So what's your take on the industry? I mean, it's still growing. Right?
Absolutely. The industry is still growing, and you're going to find a lot of things. Like I love looking at sort of the progression of it. 2 years ago, we would never have had a call from a university asking us to do audio description. Now we're getting calls from universities asking us to do audio description. So you think about a student that's taking a course that wants to get their master's or whatever it happens to be, and part of it is watching a video. So is the prof going to say, well, everybody in the class has to do it except for you, Ryan, you can't do it, and you might not get your degree? So now we're doing that. There's a lot of corporate companies that we're working with now that need to have, you know, you think about, you go to work for a big firm and you're blind, and they do an orientation type of thing, and here's all about our company and this and that. It's like, oh, well, you're blind, so we're not going to treat you the same as the guy beside you. So people are getting that. And even if there's only, say, one person that works for a big company like Johnson & Johnson or whatever it is that's blind, that person needs to be included in the same way that everybody else is. And that's all there is to it. And I'm pleased to see companies are getting that. And it's about time. But
Yeah, for sure.
it's, you know, it is increasing. And do I see it as a growing industry? Absolutely. You think about how many things that you see online and you wish they were described. And they're not described. Well, why not? They should be. And it's just a matter, I think, of picking up the phone and saying, hey, I've used your product for this long. I wanted to find out a bit more about your product. And there was a bunch of pictures there, but there was no description. I didn't know what it was about. Why would you consider having that product audio described? And for the most part, I would like to believe that they would say, you know what? Yeah, I would. I don't know where to start. And that's where our job is, to make sure that they know that they can come to us. And a lot of times we're finding that with this new, you know, the new companies that are coming in, and they're maybe a 1 minute video, a 2 minute video, they don't have a clue where to start or how to do it. And we're coming up with new ways. Like, we have a really good creative team. And at first I thought, how are we going to be able to do this? Get enough dialogue in there. We've only got 1 minute. And we've come up with some really good ways of doing it. So you'll see that changing, I think, a lot. And the other thing that we find is audio description is helping kids that are autistic.
Right.
And I love that. I think that's amazing. And I've had phone calls from moms saying to me, you know, my son, we have all of our TV shows are all on audio description, and he has learned to speak because of that. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's, you know, they're affected in a different place in their brain.
Right.
And so this information is just coming in easily. They don't have to think. It's just flowing, and they can pick up what they want to. You know, someday when I retire, I'm going to spend time researching that. I keep saying I'm going to find time to, but I've been busy doing other things, you know.
Yeah. So I have to ask, what's been the strangest request you've ever had to describe?
Oh.
Gotta ask.
Okay, well, I don't know if you know the porn channel is described.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Okay, so you asked this one.
I think I saw something on the internet a while back, only like in the last couple months or something.
I got a phone. I didn't know anything about it, and I got a phone call from New York Times asking if they could interview me about descriptive video for porn. Well, of course, first of all, I think it's a friend of mine being an ass, and going, yeah, right, okay. But I'm thinking, and so I said to him, can I give you a call back? And he said, yeah, and it was legitimate.
Yeah.
And it was Pornhub is the name.
Yes, that's what it was. Yeah, I heard about that.
And so they wanted to interview us, and I thought, okay, how do you handle this? In one side of it, you would say to yourself, okay, blind people should have access to everything.
Sure.
I shouldn't be able to say, well,
Ryan, you can't watch porn.
Exactly. That's up to your wife to say that, not me. And on the other hand, which of my writers could I say to them, I want you to write this? And so the funny thing is, the reporter didn't get back to me because I thought he's going to ask a lot of questions. I better be prepared for it.
Right.
In the meantime, I went online and I watched this, and then I got annoyed because it was really poorly described, so poorly described, and I was critiquing the porn. I mean, not the porn, but the description of the porn. And I was like, come on.
It's not good. Come on.
It wasn't good. It was so badly done. And of course, I got quite curious as to who had done it. And I don't know for sure, but to me, it was almost one of those things where you'd say, oh, so-and-so, you described this. Anybody can do this.
Right.
Sure.
Because that's how poorly it was done. You hadn't kept in all the rules of thumb that you do for regular description. So does that answer your question?
So you're doing Pornhub now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the other thing that's funny is, you think about it, you could probably make a fortune with that, because you could say, okay, we have to have a certain type of voice for it. And, it's going to cost you more. And,
Too funny.
Yeah. And there's been lots of different odd things that we've had to do. When we first started, we were doing some pretty crazy movies for Chum Television. And that was when they had some, kind of out there stuff.
Right.
And I remember, one of my writers saying to me, how do you describe a snake coming out of somebody's breast? And I said, just like you did. He said, but it's so weird. And I said, yeah, that's how you do it. The other thing that we were really wondering about early on is how you describe rape. And we watched, described a show for CTV, Matthew Broderick. And it was a young boy that had been raped.
Right.
And we thought, how graphic should you get? And it was a hard show to describe because it was very graphic. But we decided, we talked to our focus groups because, again, we can't decide those things.
Right.
And they said, you don't need to describe it fully. You can just describe sort of in a general kind of a way, which we did, and I feel like we did a very good job of it. We had to be respectful of, part of what we talk about is say what you see, but in this one you really didn't have to get that graphic because people in their own mind
can figure out what's going on.
We're figuring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's got to be a challenge. Again, it goes back to the tone thing. When you think about any sort of TV show or movie, they're shooting a scene in a specific way, and they're including different visual images in order to, garner an emotional reaction. And so I guess you have to take some of that into account when you're describing it, right? And when you're making those types of decisions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what would one of your favorite shows that you like watching
Pornhub.
be, Ryan?
Pornhub. Well, it's going to be now.
Yeah. He's getting antsy in his chair. He wants to go to his computer now and check it out.
And on an unrelated note, I'm giving notice. Giving Pornhub a call.
No, I think House of Cards, again, was a really great series.
Yeah.
The description was really well done. I could follow along. I understood what was going on. Yeah, that's probably been my favorite so far. The Marvel stuff's been really good as well. But yeah, I don't really watch a lot of descriptive broadcast TV. Again, just because it would annoy my wife.
Yeah.
Who's sighted. Yeah. Unless I went, downstairs and turned it on. But again, I can't turn it on independently. I don't know what's being described because the guide doesn't tell you. So I'd have to just turn on the SAP and hope that... What I found in the early days, I guess, is that I would tune into a channel and it would be one program, but the SAP would be describing a whole different show. It was very weird.
Oh, yeah. They had a lot of problems
That
with
would be
that, and they
surreal.
still don't have it figured out the way it should be.
Yeah, it was very strange.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I haven't gone back to it. Like I said, I only watch the descriptive stuff now on Netflix.
Mm-hmm. We won't tell the broadcasters that.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, the broadcasters and electronics manufacturers need to know that,
Absolutely.
you know, I'm a consumer like everybody else.
Yeah.
I do all my shopping on Amazon. And if I could get a Blu-ray player that had, you know, menus that were spoken,
Yeah.
I'd buy it today.
Yeah.
But I can't. That's not accessible.
Mm-hmm.
If I could get a cable box from Shaw, TELUS, Bell, whoever, that actually had a talking menu system, I'd switch today. You know, but I can't.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a lot more done
Yeah.
to bring that to their attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you think about it, it's a lost audience for them. It really is.
Yeah.
You know, if we've got 1.5 million people that are blind and vision impaired in Canada alone, that's a number of people that they're missing. And right now, broadcasters are trying to get as many viewers
Sure.
as they can. Well, they always have been, but still now with all the changes in broadcasting. So
A lot of people cutting the cord, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody just watching either off their mobile devices. How many people are actually watching live now? People DVR it and watch next day.
yeah.
Yeah, it's all changing.
Yeah.
So do you have a set focus group, or do you tend to go to the same people, or do you bring in different?
We bring in different people. So, Ryan, I'm going to be coming to you.
All right.
Yeah. We have two people that have been on our, head up what we call our research and development team,
Right.
that are blind and vision impaired, and we've worked with them for quite a while. And then we bring in different people. When we did Narcos, we brought in Spanish people because they wanted to do Spanish description too.
Right.
And Spanish research to see, do focus groups with them. And no, we use different people. There's kind of a core group that we go to, but we're always looking for other people. And we make it easy where we just send a CD.
Right.
And then that way, or we'll send a file and be very explicit on how to download it. Like most of the time, what we do is we ask them what they would prefer. And sometimes it's just easier with a CD or a DVD. And other times we'll just send a file and we'll just ask some key questions, things like, did the voice work? Was there enough dialogue, or was there enough description? Was there too much description? Anything else that you can add to it that we might have been able to do? All of those kinds of things. And one of the things that I'm always really clear on is I don't want it to be just about what we're doing well. Critique it and tell us what we could do better.
So does it go out to the focus groups, I guess, before it gets broadcast?
No, you don't ever have time to do that.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I shouldn't say you don't ever, but usually you wouldn't have time to do that.
Right.
So it's just helpful. Like if we do one series and we know we're going to get season 2 and season 3, then sometimes what we'll do is we'll go to them after we've done the first couple of episodes and
Right.
say, what do you think? So it's not, and focus groups, we do them randomly. Like I don't have every Thursday at noon we have a focus group. Not at all.
Oh, okay.
We'll just do it very randomly.
Okay.
If we've got a new type of show and I'll say, I think we should get some information on this one. We don't do it as much as we used to because we've got a pretty good flow going now. And we're, and people are busy.
Yeah.
We want to respect that they, their time as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask, if I wanted to be part of the focus group, do I need to quit my job and watch TV 8 hours a day? Because
And we
I'm there.
supply
I'll do
popcorn.
it.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
That's right. Rogan just lost 2 employees. I'm going to Pornhub, and you're going.
Yeah.
I'm going to Netflix or something, Narcos, or just go to Descriptive Video Works.
I know you guys work mainly with broadcast TV and the networks and stuff, but so you might not know this question, but now movies. Now, do they generally do all their stuff in-house, or do they farm descriptive video out?
No, they farm it out. I have a great story to tell you.
Okay, good.
I was asked to speak at the aerospace conference in Vegas. and the airlines are going to include audio description in their in-flight entertainment.
Yeah, I saw that too.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about that.
About time.
So they asked me to speak in Vegas a couple of years ago, and then they heard me speak there, the people that were doing it in Europe. And the same thing, the aerospace conference there. And so they flew me to Dubai to speak to the aerospace people there. And so I knew that Emirates, all of their flights have it. I knew Air Canada, most of their flights do. So I chose to fly Emirates because I wanted to experience audio description on the plane.
Right.
So I could talk about it. So I get there and I put my headset on and I said to the flight attendant, I said, can you show me how to set up the audio description? She says, the what?
Yeah, exactly.
I said, the descriptive video where the show is described. Oh, we don't have that. And I said, actually, you do. You have it on all your planes. And she says, well, not on this plane. I said, and she wasn't being rude, but she'd never heard of it.
There was no training. They didn't know.
No.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I'm going to be on this flight for 14 and a half hours. I know you have it here, and I would like you to figure it out. And so then she talked to the pilot. She talked to, and they did finally figure it out. The thing that was too bad, if I had been blind, there's no way I could have figured it out. But having said that, what they should have done, as anything in a plane, if you can't figure it out yourself, you ask the flight attendant. So I don't fault them for that part of it, well, I don't fault them I fault them for the fact that their staff doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
But they're just new with it. And they should, I think that they're coming up with ways that they can make it so that they have maybe a plastic cover that's got braille. We've come up with, they're trying on that. They really are.
Okay.
But the thing that to me was really cool is finally when we got it figured out, I thought, oh, what movie do I want to watch? And Room, the award-winning Academy Award winning one was described, and I was like, oh, awesome.
I watched that, yeah.
So I've got my headsets on. I'm going like, I wonder what company did this. They did a phenomenal job. That voice is awesome. And I'm listening to the whole thing. At the end of it, they said, this program has been described by Descriptive Video Works. And I'm with my sister, and I nudged her, and I'm pulling the headset over to her. I said, we did this show. And of course, we do so many shows, I don't always remember the shows we'd done. But that was, in my career, one of those pinch me moments, because I kept thinking to myself, well, who's doing as well as we are? It sounds like a bragging thing. I don't mean it that way.
Absolutely.
But I just was so impressed with this job these people were doing. Yeah. And I was also thinking, wow, I'd sure like to get that voice, but it must be some LA voice that's really expensive. Well, it's our fabulous voice here that we use a lot.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I just had forgotten it. So it was a great opportunity. So to answer your question, yes, we do movies. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always been my beef too. Like in the 21st century, with all in the U.S. they have an ADA Act, a Disability Act. Canada's looking at getting some disability acts as well. We should have accessible menu systems now.
Yeah.
In-flight entertainments should be talking to us.
Yeah.
It's no different than when you're walking through the airport and you hear flight 216 now boarding at gate blah blah blah.
Yeah.
That's all synthesized speech.
Yeah.
That's all being done by text-to-speech software. A lot of it. That in-flight entertainment should be able to talk to somebody who's blind.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it's being independent, not having to ask for help.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then, like your experience, finding, having to kind of fight with the flight attendant. Yes, you do have this.
Yeah.
No, we don't. Yes, you do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. In Gulf Air were one of the airlines that I was speaking to, and he was on the panel with me. And he was saying that their king has determined that audio description is top priority on their flights. And so everything is described. And he said, we also make sure that we treat people that are blind with the highest regard, and oftentimes we will put them in first class just automatically.
Wow.
And of course some of his people that are working there were sitting in the audience, and he kind of looked over at them. He says, I know I'm not supposed to say this out loud, but he said it really is true. And I thought, wow, isn't that nice?
Yeah.
It's like saying, you know what, we know you might have a few more challenges here. We want to give you more of our time, and in first class you can get that. So there you go.
Nice.
I thought, wow.
Yep.
Instead of, well, gee, I'm too busy, here's your coffee, here's your tea, and sorry, can't help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, throw another one out there. What is, in your memory, what's one of the most challenging shows that you guys have had to do for whatever reason?
Yeah. There's been a few of them. This wasn't a challenging show, but it was unique, and I think we're the only ones that have done this. We did the Charlie Chaplin show that's a completely silent show.
Oh, wow.
So that was an interesting one. I think it probably would be when we do foreign language ones. They're challenging. And I'm always up for the challenge, but there are days where I'm hiding under my desk and wondering what the hell I did, accepting it. But we always get there with it. Mm. And so, yeah, I would say that would probably be it. Mm. And, like we've got our tech people are great. Sometimes, as with anything, you'll have things like the producer will say, okay, yes, it's all locked, it's all done. And then they come back and they say, oh, we've made some changes. And you need to change that, and it just should take you a minute. Well, it doesn't, because it puts all of our timing and everything out. We've got to re-edit it, we've got to remix it, all of that. So those are challenging, but the thing that I'm happy to say, and I'm pretty sure I can say this, almost all of our clients come back. And that to me is an indication of the work you're doing. If your clients are coming back, it's repeat business. Sure. So when we've had challenges like that on a show, they may come back again with another series, because a lot of producers are working on a number of different series, and remember that we took care of it for them because they were in a bit of a panic too, and that they didn't have to worry about it. And our whole philosophy is it's got to be seamless for them. It's new to them. They're not saying, oh, I can't wait. I've produced this big movie or this big series and it's great and I just can't wait to do the descriptive video. Most of the time it's going to be like, I can't wait to get this thing on the air.
Right.
So if you guys are doing the descriptive video for a show and it's going to be in English, French, Spanish, German, does descriptive video works do all those languages?
We do some of them.
Some of them, yeah.
And this is just starting, so I'm not going to talk about it a lot just because it's new, and you might ask me the same question and I would say it differently in a month, because we're working it through right now to figure out the best way to do it.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So having been in the industry for so long and seen where it started and now where it's going, what's your feeling on the outlook? Is it just doing nothing but growing?
Yes. And I firmly believe that it will be 100%.
Yeah.
I wish it was faster, but I think it will be.
Yeah.
It can't not be.
And what's your feeling for like time frame for that?
Well, I'm just
that's the tricky part. I'm going to put you on the spot, but
I would really like to think that within the next 5 years, everything's going to be described.
Wow.
Is that realistic?
Why wouldn't it be?
I'm asking you.
Well, I look at how far we've come.
Yeah.
And now I look at the phone calls we're getting, like I was saying, from universities, from advertising agencies, from places that never, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, do you think these people will do it? I'd go like, no.
Yeah.
Everybody's really concerned about accessibility, and they should be for everything.
Right.
yeah.
And, we stand on a platform and say, oh, yeah, our company's completely accessible. Well, do you have this described for the blind? Is that available for the blind?
Right.
Or for people that are blind? That's not, it hasn't been to date.
Right.
So you really can't wave that flag of saying, we're 100% accessible at our company.
I guess what it really comes down to is just it's demand. I mean, obviously all the technical aspects are there. I mean, you guys can do it. You can describe porn. So I mean, really, you can do anything. It's just a matter of the need and the desire to do it. So.
And it's also hearing from the public.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They really, really, it's not a group that advocates that well.
Right.
And I remember when I first started the company, and this is the CRTC, was saying, we're not hearing anything from them. We don't know if they like it. Mm-hmm. And I would be, come on, pick up the phone. And, but it was harder at that time. It was really hard because they'd have to write a letter. Then they'd have to get somebody to take it to the mailbox or take it to the mailbox, or they'd have to figure out through the whole system, the 1-800 number and what numbers to hit. And that's one of the things I said to the CRTC, because they did a program, what was it called? Talk TV? Can't remember. But what the CRTC did is they said, tell us what you want. And then they made it so hard that a person that was blind couldn't even get through the system. And they were in our studio. And I said to them, I know that your heart's in the right place here, but you needed somebody that was blind, that was planning this whole thing, that could say, oh, whoops, you forgot this part here. I can't do this.
Yeah.
Without asking somebody else. And that's not what they want.
Well, and what's accessible to me as a blind person may not be accessible to the next guy who's blind. His vision may be different. He may have physical impairments as well.
You might not have the right equipment that
exactly.
you do.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of variables in there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, 5 years would be great.
Well, and like I say, people need to say they want it, because it's, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Old saying, but let me tell you, it still holds true, especially in this situation, especially.
And do you guys, well, I guess it's not even your arena, but who would somebody talk to about descriptive media guides? Like, other than calling Shaw up, Shaw's just going to say, well, we don't do that. Would you go to CRTC?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep. Yeah, I would go to the CRTC. And they tell us that they're really willing to listen.
Right.
Like when the commission, the last hearings that we were involved in were 2 years ago, and the commission asked me if I would speak at them. And I was really very grateful they had, because they weren't asking companies to speak, because it could be perceived, and they know me well enough, but it could be perceived that you're waving the flag of your company.
Right.
And I wave the flag of the good work we do, not of, And so Sean Marcelez, I don't know if you...
one of our clients.
Yeah.
We had her on talking about blind beginnings. And
she's awesome. And I asked her to speak with me at the hearing. And so the commission is usually pretty tough on broadcasters, but they were not tough on us, because Sean spoke very well. And one of the things she said at the end of it is, she says, I'm just like you. I just can't see.
Right.
And I know it really hit home. And they really did listen.
Right.
So I really believe that if you called the CRTC, you emailed them, whatever, and if you got a couple of other people that believe the same thing as you, I think they will listen.
Yeah.
Because there's got to be something that they can do. And who knows, maybe it's already in the works, and somebody's put it sort of to the side of their desk because they were too busy doing other things. And that phone call that you make, they're going to go, you know what, we need to get on that. And it's been sitting there. That's the best way to get anything changed. It was funny, because we had a person that was blind phoned us and said, do you do so-and-so show for Netflix? And I said, I don't think that's audio described. And they were like, oh, you guys should do it. It's such a great show. Why aren't you doing it? And I said, well, phone Netflix. Yeah. Sure enough, they phoned Netflix. Netflix got a hold of us and said, here's a new series. We want this audio described.
Wow.
And that just took somebody saying, I'm actually going to pick up the phone. I'm going to do this. Because, and I'm sure somebody's done research on how many times we think of doing something like that. You go to a store and the clerk is really nice, and you go, I'm going to phone their boss and tell them how great they were, and then you forget all about it, Well,
I think that's the one thing to take away from this. And if anybody who's listening, you want a show described on Netflix, give them a call.
Yeah. Or you want something done, where it's easier for you to access it on television or anything like that. Figure out who it is that can change that for you, and pick up the phone and make the call.
So how can people get a hold of you, Diane?
Well, I first of all want to thank both of you so very much for reaching out to me. I love any time that I can get more information out about descriptive video. I really do. And any questions you have afterwards, let me know for sure.
Absolutely.
And it's online. We're descriptivevideoworks.com. And our phone number and contact information and everything is there.
Okay.
And my email is diane@descriptivevideoworks.com.
Great.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming in. We really appreciate it. And it was super interesting.
Absolutely.
Good.
And this is probably going to be one of our best shows. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
So, Ryan, how do people contact us?
Well, the easiest way to reach out to us is by visiting the website at www.atbanter.com.
Oh, that's pretty sneaky. So you went straight to the website instead of the email address, you bastard.
All the contact information is on that website.
It is, but you can also email us at atbanterpodcast@gmail.com.
They can follow us on Twitter at _atbanter.
What? No, they can't.
It's AT_banter.
Yeah, that's right.
At _ banter.
That's so awkward.
I know it is.
Okay, anyways, it's fine.
They can follow us on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, I knew it was going to happen sooner or
So
later.
go to the website.
Just
all
go
the
to
contact.
Just go to the website.
Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Google+. Send us your comments and suggestions.
And you can visit Aroga Technologies at, of course, www.aroga.com. AROGA.com.
Where there's financing available.
And a lovely clearance section.
Please check out the clearance section. Christmas is coming. Black Friday is coming. Good excuse to spend money.
What do we got going on next week? You knew I was going to ask you that.
I know. I think next week.
Oh, no. Now we're just going to guess? Well, it's okay. It's okay. I got the episode
can
number
edit it.
wrong.
You can
I got
edit
the
it.
episode number wrong, so you can get the guess wrong.
I believe next week's guests are Sophia and a colleague of hers talking about vision teaching in education.
Oh, is that next week?
I believe so.
Oh, that'll be a good one. Excellent. I'm looking forward to that one.
So I got to make sure Steve is here for that.
Are they coming in studio?
No, they're out in the Kootenays.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be Zoom.
All right. Well, that'll be a good one.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
All right, everybody. That's going to do it for us. I have been Rob Minot.
And I've been Professor.
Way to screw up your joke. Whatever.
Yeah, well, I'm Ryan. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
This podcast has been brought to you by Aroga Technologies. Visit Aroga Technologies online at www.aroga.com. That's AROGA.com. Music provided by bensound.com.